Okay.
Right. Hey everybody, welcome back to Irreverent Sensei. So it's me, Eric, and my buddy Joe. And so I have a question for Joe this time. So Joe, last time we were kind of talking about why I studied karate and what keeps me going. So I have a question for you that I think is topical. So with COVID and everything that's been going on and groups not being able to get together and people not being able to really train, a lot of people had to do a lot more maybe solo training, a lot more kata practice, that kind of a thing. So let me ask you this. So what value do you see in that? How do you think it should be done? And yep, the dogs got in. How do you think it should be done? What do you think people should be working on most when they're working on that? Just for starters.
Yeah, that's a big question. So form training and kata training kind of got a bad rap for a little while. And in some ways, rightly so, because I think the objectives of solo training aren't clearly understood by a lot of folks out there. So if you look at martial arts in general, the vast majority of your time training will be by yourself. I mean, there's the combat sports, with like wrestling and jits and judo that, obviously because it is a sport, there's a good chunk of time that you will be doing two-man drills and exercises. But in general, even those sports in some way, shape, or form have solo training associated with them. And when I define solo training, I define it several ways. I define it, kind of strengthening and stretching and cardiovascular training for that particular, combat sport. The other thing is also skill enhancement. So if we take karate in general, or in its origins, like Okinawan karate, Japanese karate, Korean martial arts, stand up, and of course the Chinese martial arts. I think the way kata is taught in the modern era is backwards. And this is what I mean by that. People are taught these movements and they progress in their martial art training, and then they square peg, round hole these movements to fit a paradigm. This movement, this circular movement is a block. So therefore, I'm going to try to fit this circular movement into, I was told it was a block, so therefore it is a block. And realistically, then when there's a matriculation into some type of real fighting, you find out very quickly that this doesn't work as a quote unquote block. So that begs the question, why are we doing those movements if functionally they're not going to be used effectively in a real situation under stress? So I believe if you look at the earliest quote unquote forms in martial arts, and you look at Chinese martial arts, we'll call it like in Swai Jiao, Chinese wrestling, Swai Jiao. There's 4 basic flavors of Swai Jiao, but just doesn't matter. What, in wrestling is a good example, because you get 2 people to practice a particular throw. And I grab you and, I throw you, and we'd be doing like a basic hip throw. I grab you, throw you, grab you, throw you, grab you, throw you. And then I would build tactile kind of like feeling and timing and all body awareness on how to do that. So the problem then became, well, I always needed a body, for a swijow, and which is good. I mean, if you're going to fight, you need something to fight with, and that's the best way to practice if you practice efficiently. But oftentimes you don't have a body. So this comes into your question around solo training. So this is the reason why I said it's usually done backwards, is because if I am just taught this esoteric movement like this, and I'm just making up a movement now, but it's never explained to me that, I'm grabbing, guy's shoulder, and I'm, grabbing, the other underneath, and I'm, twisting my body, and I'm taking him down in a kind of spiraling arc. If that's never explained to me over a period of time, this movement just becomes this movement that people then make up stuff. They go, oh, I believe this is a double punching movement, or some crazy thing like that. And it's like, okay. So, and so that's part of the kata form problem, is, the original meaning or the intent of the movement, that particular movement, gets lost in time. The other thing that's very, very important, I think, is this. If in fact you practice a movement where you're going through that whole body feeling, you understand how your alignment should be, you're feeling like that pressure. If you do that first, when you practice it solo, then you have this mind-body connection thing where you can say, like, if I'm going to throw a right cross, I've thrown like a lot of right crosses at you, Eric, in my life, but so I can visualize, and go through that motion of like how it should feel and how my alignment should be. And am I punching, and am I using my posterior chain to elicit force? If I only are introduced kata and form from the get-go, well, just do this. And that's what it looks like, right? So there's a big difference. I'm doing this, and the guy goes, yeah, that's right. But there's a big difference and this is, kind of like what Tim was saying before about the whole intent thing. You get a body feeling because I punched you in the face 1,000 times, and I'm like, now the movement is the same, but the body connection, mind-body connection, is different. And that's really what kata should be. The other thing that kata should be is this, in my opinion. The creator of the kata, or the creators of the form or kata, had the intent or the purpose of how they wanted to generate power in that, so with that particular movement. So it's kind of like a template, the kata, that if you adhere to the structural and, being structurally sound, and, through alignment and breathing and the use of momentum and inertia, gravity, you theoretically could have the same body feeling as the creator of the kata. The difference is it won't look the same. And this is where the traditionalists go awry. They go, well, that's right, because you're going to make the kata your own. And then they start like bending over, and they start, doing all these kind of weird things. That's not what they mean by meaning the kata your own. What they mean by doing the kata your own is everybody is adhering to the principles of structure, breathing, alignment, all this intent. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. All is in san chin. It's not because I'm doing my own san chin. That means I look like I'm a hunchback in Notre Dame. That's not what it means. It means alignment, structure, posture, breathing, timing, gravity, inertia, all these things, natural flow, all these things are, if you, based upon everybody's levers are different sizes and lengths, you're adhering to those principles, which are more important than, the individual, so, and you're just adhering, you're making those principles fit into your physical, kind of puzzle. That's a big thing that's missing. People say, well, I think it should be done like this. It's like, yeah, but the guy who invented it, and so they go like this. So then the argument goes like this. Well, Joe, you don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. It's like, yeah, if you're probably correct, because, the guy it was handed off to, kind of blew it. And then he blew it. And then he blew it. And nobody wants to hear that, right? So nobody wants to hear that. So, so what you need to do is you need to kind of go back, and this is where, Luke, my son, Luke, for those who don't know, Luke's a doctor in PT, physical therapy. And the other thing too is, seriously, he's trained, he's a kinesiologist genius. And so like,
yes,
so he puts together, he's trained professional athletes at the, professional hockey players, Kyrie Irving. And he, I got a story when Kyrie Irving came to Boston, Luke was working at Mike Boyle's strength and conditioning facility. And so Luke called me like after work, and he's like, Dad, guess who I, put through a workout? And I said, who? He goes, Kyrie Irving. And I go, oh, Luke, that's awesome. Who's Kyrie Irving? And so it's like, he helped train the U.S. judo team, stuff like that. So, but what Luke says, and this is what Tim did too. Like, you look at biomechanics. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? You go like this. Well, it's for health. I do martial arts for health. Okay, good. If you do martial arts for health, how come you're squishing all your organs together? Anybody who tells you your fifth grade school teacher will say, stand up straight. Why? Because you stand up straight and all your organs hang better. And so if you're not doing this in your kata or your form, like bolt upright, then you're not being healthy. So you're missing the health objective. Also, you're missing from a biomechanic perspective on how to produce power. So the importance of kata is, realistically, you have the time. You don't have these external variables. Meaning, I'm not worried about Eric punching me in the face. Mm-hmm. I have the time to work on my structure, my posture, and stuff like that. So guys who go through their kata like a million miles an hour are just sloppy. The reason why, like, a lot of the different Chinese forms, especially in the internal, are done slow, and then people go, "Oh, you wouldn't fight with that." It's like, right, you train slow to fight fast, you moron. So it's like you're going slow so you can take inventory and structurally always be aligned. If you're going fast, you have the luxury of being super sloppy, and also you don't have the luxury of of feeling weight distribution, and that's how you elicit power. Shifting from one leg to the other. So the importance of the importance of kata, and I'll quote Toyama Seiko Sensei on this, and Seizan Sensei, taught me this phrase, and it's kata wa Mizuru Mono, which means kata needs to show everything. So you need to be able to. And what that means to me is, not only are you showing the technique, so perfect practice makes perfect. You try to be as perfect as possible structurally. So it's not about, I'm throwing this punch and I feel better if I whip my shoulder like that. Well, that's great, but you're throwing off your alignment for an ego-driven result. The kata is just a template. where you're taking a very strict approach to your training. And then when you start to play, meaning experiment from a self-defense perspective or an application perspective, you have the luxury of, being, improvisational. So if you want to look at it this way from a music analogy, kata is like strict classical sheet music, whereas when all the variables start to come in and you're in the mix and you're throwing stuff, you're fighting. Fighting is improvisational jazz. You're just kind of riffing at, but it makes some sense of order because you're always falling back on those principles and structures and in alignments and stuff like that. I don't even know if I answered your question.
So kind of, well, hear me out on this, because I was thinking about this and I was kind of thinking of, and I think the other thing too is people look at kata and they think of it as being sort of, again, like we said last time, kind of mystical and magical. So like I think you said, one of the points of kata is just to kind of get that body feeling of how to generate power and transfer power and widget. So I was thinking of it this way. So again, maybe kind of demystify a little bit. I started thinking about like, all right, like a baseball hitter, like someone like David Ortiz, right? Somewhere Boston, right?
Yep.
I'm sure like, yeah, David Ortiz maybe did a lot of like batting practice against, the pitching machines and all that. But I would bet a lot of money that David Ortiz, I know for a fact that he would, watch tapes of himself.
Yeah.
To analyze what he was doing.
His form, right?
Which I think is important. Yeah, to analyze his form. But I'd be willing to bet anything too. He probably stood there a couple times before, he was hitting stuff at batting parts, and I'd be willing to bet he kind of like went slow and said, okay, I'm gonna and probably got the feel of how he was shifting his weight. And just kind of went through it in his head and all that.
Watch all those guys. That's what they do. Like the Olympics.
That's basically doing kata.
Yeah, exactly. And like I was watching the Olympics, and I was watching some of the gymnasts who are phenomenal athletes, phenomenal, just like wow, what they can do with their body, wow. And I was watching several of them, and I think there was this one particular woman that I thought was very interesting. She was going to do her balance beam routine, and she went like this, and it was like she was going through, like she was going through it in her head first, and then she was off to the side, and she was kind of like going through like whatever she was going to do. Yeah. And then it was her turn to get called up. She did her routine, and it's that. It's the routine was her fighting the application, and her going through the motions on the floor while she was waiting for her turn was like she was going through kata. Yeah, you're spot on with David Ortiz.
Yeah. So I mean, you kind of touched upon it too, but I think a lot of people are missing like the speed of kata. How do you think it should be? Like you said it should show everything. So you're saying it should be at a slower pace.
Most guys are just goddamn sloppy. I mean, you look at it and people go, oh yeah, good kata, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, like here's the thing, and Takara Sensei said this. I remember this, one time, and he said, you don't drive 90 miles an hour everywhere you go, do you? And I was like, no, I don't. He goes, and your kata shouldn't be like that either. It's like you should have a nice pace, controlled pace. That's the whole thing. So,
and I think we kind of touched upon this once before. We were talking before is that people say, oh, I do my kata fast because I want to be fast. If I'm going to fight someone, I'm going to be fast.
Right.
But I think speed is kind of an illusion a lot of times for people. They think, oh yeah, I have to really move really fast.
Right.
Where if you're positioned correctly, people are going to think you moved really fast without really moving fast, if that makes sense to people. If you're, for example, a boxer, if he, cuts a good angle on a jab and he's right there and he just goes pow.
Right.
Everyone's gonna say, oh my God, that, he might just go like boom, boom real quick with 2 shots. Right. And it's like, oh my God, he's so fast. Well, he was fast because he had that advantageous angle.
Right.
He was set up, boom, boom.
That's right.
or like, say from a Chinese martial art perspective, you were positioned in such a way that when you stepped in, you were able to put the person off balance. And I was like, oh my God, how'd you throw him? I didn't even see it. Well, because you were just angled at that position that you were able to knock the person off balance where you were balanced and they weren't.
That's exactly it. That's higher level martial arts, specifically like you want to be in an advantageous position. So you create an angled advantage for you all the time. And oftentimes that gives the illusion of speed, so it's, if I try to match speed now when I work out with Luke, from an athleticism perspective, I will get lit up every single time. But if I can create angles of advantage for myself, then I can create, quote unquote, the illusion of speed, but it's just good physics, So, and that's the thing. And that's the thing. That's what people should be practicing. I think you get a bigger bang for your buck if you're practicing that. I mean, don't get me wrong. You still, you got to be in shape. You got to be, you got to have pressure. You got to do all this other stuff. But they're better off if they practice a little slow and they think about their angles and stuff like that. I told you, like, I think I mentioned before that when Sean Eklund or Mickey Ward are in the gym and they're going through their shadow boxing stuff, they're going slow. They're not. Every once in a while they let it rip, stuff like that. But they're visualizing, what's going on, and that's really the essence of what you should be doing when you're practicing your kata, not doing, it's like, who fights like that? You watch any fight, nobody fights like that,
Right.
That's
Right.
just so, so it's like, they say, well, you should train like how you train how you fight, or fight how you train. It's like, yes, but there's a time and place for that. What you're doing, with kata is you're doing a lot of that foundational work. You're doing a lot of foundational work. I'll just talk about sanchin. It's like foundational. Everything, all is in sanchin. Sanchin isn't all, right? It's like, oh, whatever. All's in sanchin. Really cool. It's not. It has nothing to do with fighting. It has everything to do with structure, alignment. All that stuff. I mean, like, and so, like, if you're bent over like Quasimodo and you're squeezing all your guts down, and it's like, is that really correct? Let's think about it. Is that how you would, be out there to fight?
Right.
Anybody who fights like that.
To your point of like train like you fight and fight like you train, like you say, if you're doing kata slow and everyone's like, oh, you're doing it slow, that's not how you would fight. But like you say, if you're being structurally sound, if you're thinking about angles, if you're thinking about your alignment of your body, then that's how you should fight.
That's right.
Like you're not, you may not be like going, wow, whack, but you are aware of
be relaxed. And be relaxed.
Yes.
Correct. So anybody who's done any rounds in a gym, whether it's Muay Thai, boxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, knows all about the breathing, relaxing, structure. You go to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament, this is all you hear: posture, posture, posture up, posture up. What does that mean? That means get your structure, because you're strong in a proper structure. Boxing, like, hey, head back, chin down, chin down. Why is that? Because now your spine's aligned. It's simple. So anyway, I think that was a good question. So, oh, and with that, the dogs have we're gonna end it, Johnny, with this.
With the dogs yelping, they're done. So yeah.
So yeah.
Sorry about that.
So here's the deal too. I just want to also point out that we train in the Chelmsford, Massachusetts area, on Thursday and Sundays. Anybody's welcome to come down and join. Can hit me up, BellanyKarate.com. Eric, maybe you can put that up.
Yeah, we can put that in or something. Yeah.
And so Eric and I are there, and well as several other guys, that are.
It's a good group. Yeah.
It's a great group of people. we can talk next time about how I organize it, because I don't mass produce this, because just like when you train a boxer, you don't train boxers like every single boxer in your gym the same way. It's the same thing with karate. That's the old Okinawan way. The Japanese started mass producing. That's a whole nother topic. I have my whole thoughts on Gichin Funakoshi in the university system. Kano, it's a good, good guys. They did a lot of good things, but so we'll just leave it at that.